Welcome to the IREL podcast. Are you sick and tired of real estate gurus pitching their next free construction deal, only to find out years later they were completely wrong? Worried the next overseas conference you spend thousands to attend will only be used to sell overpriced lots and deserted developments? Join thousands of other international real estate seekers who are looking for their place in paradise without the sales pitch. Straight from your host, Taylor White.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of the IREL podcast. I am your host, Taylor White. We have an absolute jam-packed and quite possibly the most detailed show to date with Kelly Macfarlane from Didim Sun Properties in Didim, Turkey, and we'll get the straight skinny on the local real estate scene and have you coming away wanting to investigate its local property market further or cross it off your shortlist entirely and continue listening. Right now from Kelly, you will learn why someone who attended 4 universities across 2 countries chose Turkey and the magic words that drew her and her family. Breaks down the calculated reasons she chose to move her family to Didim instead of other popular locations such as Bodrum and Izmir. What currency most Turkish real estate is priced in and the 2 backup currencies to keep in mind just in case. The exact types of properties Kelly recommends you look at today and sets this Yankee straight on what a bespoke property is, provides the most colorful reveal to Where's My Cheddar, and much more. And don't forget, if you are listening to this podcast and want to grab Kelly's contact details, links on buying or selling Didim real estate, or any other show notes, head on over to irelpodcast.com/7. That's irelpodcast.com/7. Grab yourself a Reiki, kebab, and try not to laugh as your humble host had his head spinning, learning from Kelly about this special part of the Aegean coast. My tongue is tied, but in case you can't tell, I'm excited. Let's get Kelly on the phone. Hey Kelly, it's Taylor White. I am thrilled to have you on the IREL podcast today, straight from Didim, Turkey. So we can get to know you personally. Tell us about yourself and where your stomping grounds were before you ended up in Turkey.
Hello Taylor, thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. I make up one half of a husband and wife team that owns and manages Didim Sun Properties. We're an independent real estate agency here in Didim on Turkey's beautiful Aegean coast. I was born in London in 1970 within the sound of Bow Bells, so technically classed as an authentic Cockney, but I mainly grew up in Kent, England, known as the Garden of England. I lived the first 36 years of my life based in England, although I did spend a year in the States as a student. And I also spent a lot of happy holidays travelling around Europe when I was a student and whilst working after my studies. My husband, Max, he was born in Turkey and he lived there until his mid-20s, after which he lived in England for just over 10 years. And then we both moved to Turkey in 2006 with our 2 children, who up until that point in time didn't speak Turkish or have much knowledge of their Turkish heritage. When we moved, some people were quite envious of what we were doing, but most thought we were completely crazy.
Well, Kelly, I can certainly relate to being called crazy, as I bought my first overseas property at the age of 23 in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And so we can get a better idea of you professionally, give us your brief resume leading up to you working at Didim Sun Properties, which was awarded the 2010 title of Best Medium-Sized Agency in the AIPP Excellence Awards.
Thanks. Well, I took my first degree, educational degree in London, and I spent 1 year while I was studying for that degree as an exchange student at Michigan State University in East Lansing. And to be honest, that was the beginning, the real eye-opener to a different way of life and culture, a different side of life outside of London. And it started the questioning process that I think's got me to a really good place now that I'm in my 40s. Because originally I was an English southerner through and through, but through travel, work and meeting my husband, I changed my perspectives on life, normalities, ethics, etc. Up until the age of 36, I had completed 4 universities in 2 different countries and in 4 different cities. I'd worked in junior positions in both for a British bank, And also I worked for an American fashion retailer. And to be honest, being at the bottom was really tough. After university, I worked in senior management in both the private sector for 2 American fashion retailers and 2 British fashion retailers. I worked in the public sector, and I worked for 2 English councils as both a project manager and a change manager. That's one of the advantages of a British education and living in the UK. You can change your career, you can change the genre of work that you do. Your education is quite generic, and I found that working for all these different types of organisations of different nationalities, the only factor that any of these organisations had in common is that all of them had a completely different culture. And I think that set the tone for the next stage of my professional life, really to become self-employed in a foreign country where I didn't speak the language very well and I didn't understand the rules or the culture. Max and I, my husband and I, decided to make the move in New Year 2004. We decided that we'd try and do it on a 2 to 3 year plan and to move to Turkey. And basically that's exactly what we did. We've never done much in life to plan, but we did do this to plan. It took us 2.5 years to tie up our loose ends before coming to Turkey. And those loose ends included equipping ourselves with training for real estate. So when we moved to Turkey, we had to come separately because I was still committed to working for one of the local councils back in England, and I needed to complete my responsibilities there. It took us a further 6 months in Turkey for Max to complete his legal conveyancing courses and training. So really, for that first couple of years, patience in Turkey, patience was required in abundance. As we needed to cope with the language, we had to build up cultural differences, we had professional training to do, and also on a domestic side, we had to settle our eldest child into a state school where she could barely communicate, her language skills were poor. I had to get used to having a little child at home because I'd always been a working mum with kids in childcare. And on top of all that, we had to set up a new business. But phew, we survived, we came through, we're smiling, we're loving life. And they were the building blocks, really, for the business that we have today.
Wow, Kelly, 4 universities in 2 countries is very impressive. Now, we are getting more familiar with who you are both on a personal and professional level. Let's start to dig into your journey just a little bit. Take us back to your mindset. What were some of the reasons why you decided to look at other countries to begin with years ago? And then maybe which countries you were considering before choosing Turkey?
Well, to be honest, Taylor, I only ever considered Turkey outside of the UK, and we chose to emigrate for personal as well as professional reasons. We didn't move for property motivated or investment related decisions. It was just a quality of life issue for us. There's a great deal to be said for living in your home country, and you don't give that up easily. Max, despite being in England for more than 10 years, he clearly wasn't happy there. He was underachieving at work, and that was frustrating him. He really wanted to get into real estate, but without a formal British education, he couldn't get a foot in the door. On top of that, Max really missed the rich cultures of Turkey, the wonderful weather. I think he missed the food as well. I was tired. You know, I had a high-powered career, which basically meant money in return for a piece of my soul, as well as too much of my time. I had a lovely young daughter and a newborn baby, as well as a lovely husband who wasn't happy in Britain. And I only saw those 3 main people in my life very briefly each day. I had the great career, but it was not satisfying me. On top of that, Max yearned to be in real estate, and I wanted more for my family life. So really, the decision to move to Turkey came about, I guess, naturally. It was New Year 2004, and I don't know, just something happened, and we realised that, you know what, in Turkey, Max could be the sole provider for our family, or we could work together. We could see more of each other. It meant Max could train in real estate as he dreamed of doing, and I could either work with him, or be a stay-at-home mum, or teach English as I was trained to do, and I loved and still do love with a passion. So Turkey seemed for us like the land of opportunities as opposed to the land of the daily grind, you know, the rat race that we had in England. Of course, the thought of being able to live mortgage-free, have a minimum of 300 days of sunshine, and also great food and a healthy lifestyle had a really positive influence on us.
Kelly, listeners and I are always fascinated to learn about which countries people have considered and why, and you nailed the number one reason we hear mentioned so often, the magic words of quality of life. Mm-hmm. Now, let's delve deeper into Turkey as a whole, and then why you chose Didim in particular versus other popular Turkey locations like Bodrum and Izmir.
Well, once we were focused on our route, the decision about exact location was a process of elimination, really, research and time. Didim came about as a calculated choice. It was clear that property potential was going to be our deciding factor for our location. I've always been a bit of a property holic, and I come from a family of them. So Max asked me to help him analyse the growth potential factors on a few coastal resorts in Turkey. That included Bodrum and Izmir, two areas we knew very well. We'd never heard of Didim before 2006, the year we moved here. So back in 2004, we were mainly focusing on Bodrum and Izmir. Max was of the belief that to do well in business, and this is a cultural belief, really a Turkish cultural belief, to do well in business in Turkey, one cannot operate alone, one needs a family support system and a network around to improve one's chances of success. Well, we blew that one out of the water because my husband's family lived in Izmir, Turkey's third biggest city on the west coast, and also he had family in Şanlıurfa. It's a big city in the east of Turkey. Not at all the European touristic resorts that Didim or Izmir or Bodrum may be. Both of these are big cities, they're great in their own way, but we felt that the property market was going to be, at that time, mainly intended for Turkish buyers. And as we had two languages, we wanted to use that advantage. Also at that time, there was no credit or mortgage facilities for Turkish home buyers. It was cash buyers only. Whereas in the main, the foreign buyers were buying up in abundance and they were getting credit easily from lenders in their home countries. You have to bear in mind this was the early noughties. So back in 2004, when we started to plan and do research visits, our plan originally was to move to Bodrum, further down the Aegean coast from where we are now. This was where Max and I had met many years ago, so it had nice memories for us. And it was also where Max called home for many, many years before moving to England. He had a big circle of contacts and friends in Bodrum, but over time I was falling out of love with Bodrum because by 2004 Bodrum had built up beyond recognition and property prices had gone crazy. It had boomed. The cost of living was and still is very, very high in Bodrum. Life is fast. You know what? There were even nasty little creatures like kids on street corners. And I just didn't want any of that for my kids. I wanted my kids to be in a nice, docile, polite kind of place. So we struggled to find what we wanted in Bodrum. We didn't have a big budget for our family home because we were buying cash. And as the Americans would say, I wanted more bang for my buck, as well as a better environment for the children. I wanted schools within walking distance. And, you know, the all-important business factor, I wanted a housing environment that was looking forward, where prices were attractive and a place where we could envisage opening a thriving real estate business. You know, it was just really coincidence that a relative, after hearing Max's grumbles about Bodrum, he suggested that we looked in a small place called Didim, further up the coast. He said it was like a rosebud. He described it as being like Bodrum as it was 20 years ago. This intrigued us. So Max asked me to research it on the net, which I duly did. And sure enough, there wasn't much information about Didim, and it was clear that property was extremely cheap compared to the more prominent resorts on the same coast. So Max went up to Bodrum and he spent a week checking the resort out, and then I got the phone call, the one that told me to get on a plane as quick as I could because he had found the house for us, as well as the place for us. So off I trots with 2 kids in tow, and we spent a week in Didim, the 4 of us, and during that time we found our new hometown, we found our ideal house, we bought the house, we moved in, and 8 years later we still live there today.
Well, Kelly, unfortunately, I haven't been to Turkey yet, but listening to you makes me want to hop on a plane right after we talk and experience some of the amazing things you are talking about. Through my travels, I am a firm believer in that I either get a place or I don't. Share with us some reasons why Didim speaks to you.
Oh, Didim is lovely. Didim is a peninsula on the Aegean coast. It's situated between two international airports. We have Izmir up the coast and Bodrum down the coast. We also have plans for our own international airport just a few minutes up the road. But that's not off the ground yet. The Didim Peninsula is situated between the busy touristic resorts of Kuşadası and Bodrum. Yet it's not as developed or busy as these resorts, and the slower pace was attractive to me and my family. Property prices and the cost of living in Didim is cheaper than its two neighbouring resorts. The Didim Peninsula has 45 kilometres of sandy coastline. There are several different resorts on the peninsula, each with a different flavour and ambience. Each resort appeals to a different type of buyer, really. We thought this a real positive for the real estate business, as there is a resort and property type for all tastes. Sometimes people ask us if there are properties for all budgets in Didim, and we have to say no, and they usually take that as a negative, but in fact we think that's a positive because we don't have the super luxury in this area. The silly money dream homes, as we call them, they do not exist in Didim, and value for money is an expression that really gets used a lot by our clients and prospective property purchasers. On the weather front, Didim has its own microclimate, as well as an abundance of sunshine. As I said, we have more than 300 days of sunshine every year, a minimum 300 days, and we have very mild winters. Didim has a constant breeze and it has low humidity. There's no industry in the area, makes the air really pure. Turkish doctors frequently refer patients to Didim for convalescing. The air is said to be of the highest quality for sufferers of chest conditions, which interested Max back in our researching days, as he was an asthma sufferer when we lived in England, although that is history since we've lived in Didim. On a local level, Didim Altinkum is a very long resort, quite narrow and very long. One end is being the resort of Altinkum. Altinkum is a Turkish word meaning golden sands, and as the name depicts, Altinkum has several long sandy beaches, as well as all the seaside attractions, nightlife, etc. The top end of Didim, the far end, the narrow end, has an ancient Greek temple and ancient historic sites, which attract huge numbers of tourists every year. And in between, there's a regular Turkish town centre, so we have the regular town centre between the two tourist attractions. To top all of these factors, only one resort within the whole peninsula has steep hills. So Didim is relatively flat, and it's totally adored by the older population as a retirement resort. We felt, Max and I, that as the natural beauty and the health benefits were such, there's such a small residual population, as well as the fact that the area was clearly intended for progress back in those days, a lot of which has already happened, and we still have plans for at least another 5 years of infrastructural and touristic building plans and progress. It made Didim at the time, in 2006, a great place to move to, and these days it makes it a great place to continue to live in, and we enjoy the benefits of a life in Didim.
Kelly, we have gotten to know you both personally and professionally, reasons why you chose Turkey and why Didim speaks to you. But get ready, because now it's time for us to pick your brain on the local real estate scene. And to get the juices flowing, we're going to do a quick round of what I like to call the real estate hot seat. We'll ask you 5 rapid-fire questions, and you give me an answer in 15 seconds or less each. Kelly, are you ready for the Didim hot seat?
I'm ready, Taylor.
What currency is real estate priced in?
Okay, most properties are sold in Turkish lira, but sometimes a resale property may be sold in sterling or euros if the owner is foreign and refuses to sell in another currency.
Is owning property as a foreigner legal?
Oh yes, absolutely legal.
Can property be titled?
All properties have title deeds, Taylor.
Can money flow in and out of Turkey easily, or are there currency restrictions?
No currency restrictions, except for cash. There's a restriction of 10,000 euros or any currency equivalent per person per trip, but all bank transfers are limitless.
And as listeners know, my number one question, what is your favorite local drink?
Well, it should be raki, which is the alcoholic, potent, licorice-like clear liquor. Oof, that's lovely. But that is really, really strong and only recommended in small quantities. So I think I would go for ayran, which is a Turkish yogurt drink. It's refreshing, healthy, and a super pick-me-up in the heat of the summer.
Kelly, first answer yet of yogurt, but along the coast with some meat dishes, sun, I can definitely feel what you're talking about. Okay. And now you can relax, Kelly, but just a little bit, as you are off the Didim hot seat. But it's time to zero in on the local real estate scene. Give us your brief synopsis on the Didim real estate market over the last few years, where it is today, and then where you see it heading for the next few years.
Okay, well, it almost seems as if there's like two markets at the moment, Taylor. The new property market continues to flourish and prices continue to rise as land supply decreases. But there's also a second market. There's quite a few overstretched foreign vendors from other countries who are finding it tough in their home country and are therefore selling their foreign property at extremely competitive prices. Focusing on the new properties, to give your listeners an idea, the average two-bedroom apartment was about 22,000 lira in 2003. And 11 years later, here in 2014, the average two-bedroom apartment will cost around 90,000. That's actually a conservative example. And it's more than 400% increase in 11 years. And in that time, we've weathered an economic meltdown in the Western economy. And those were the economies which originally provided the buyers that caused the prices in Didim to rise so rapidly. I think two things a buyer should always be very aware of in Turkey is that, one, there's no agreed value for any property. There's no street value, there's no precedence. The vendor sets the price and can sell at whatever price he or she wants to sell at. So that can be a negative. Imagine vendors who want to overcharge a naive foreigner. Or it can also be a positive for a buyer. People can undersell, and then the buyer's thinking, this property's a no-brainer. So a prospective buyer needs to do a lot of research before buying a loan. Or they need to consult an agency that has local knowledge, has been based here for a good length of time, as even though there's no precedence or street value, these factors do actually influence the buyer's decision to buy or whether to leave a property, regardless of what a vendor may ask for his or her property. Everybody wants to pay the right price. And at Didim Some Properties, we work for the buyer to get them the right price. The second and most important of the buyer beware points is that prior to a price being deemed as satisfactory, the buyer must be aware of the fact that there's no responsibility on a seller to provide all of the paperwork. Not only to provide it, it doesn't necessarily have to be in place. So the buyer must either ask for everything themselves, which if you're foreign is not so easy to do, or they must use a decent real estate agent who will have done the due diligence on a property before taking on the instruction. And at Didim Some Properties, we only take on properties with full title deeds, properties that are debt-free, and properties with habitation licenses, the key documentation that a buyer wants to see. So over the next 5 years, well, I'd like to think that we'll continue to see prices increase, but actually, who knows? Didim itself is reliant on foreign buyers and tourism from within Turkey to keep the market buoyant. And as other countries try new measures to manipulate their own domestic economies, maybe that will help or hinder the decision of foreign investors to invest at home rather than invest abroad. I wish I had a crystal ball, Taylor, but I don't.
Kelly, you have us sold on Turkey as a country, Didim as a location, and then its real estate outlook within the near future. Of course, you don't have a crystal ball. I sure as heck don't. No one does. But that is why I think it's so vitally important to get on-the-ground insight from local real estate professionals. And yes, I just used the words local and on-the-ground in the same sentence to drive home a very important fact. Kelly, you are not some newsletter writer who might spend a few days in Didim and then send out emails with hot buys, calling yourself an international real estate guru. You are there in the trenches on a daily basis, dealing with local buyers, sellers, agents, lawyers, and every facet of the real estate business. Kelly, break this down even further for us. Pretend you are Google Maps or Google Street View. What streets, neighborhoods, or parts of the city are we talking about in Didim?
Okay, this answer would really depend on the needs and requirements of the property investor. We tailor all our property viewing visits to the client's needs. So what I'm about to say would not apply to all of our buying clients, but speaking generally. For example, a client tells me they want a buy-to-let on a long-term basis. We would say that they need to be up in Didim town centre because this is undergoing a lot of urban regeneration. Convenience is key here. Modern is fashionable, but resale offers better value for money. Prices per metre squared are very attractive. Rental yields are around 5% for a new build or 8 to 9%, sometimes 10% on a resale property. Supply is low, so there's no need to buy new to secure a decent renter. If someone wanted a buy-to-let come holiday home, they should be very close to the attractions of Altrincham, as the name Altrincham attracts the most tourists. We would recommend the buyer to buy on one of the complexes that has established travel companies advertising there and with a history of great rental figures. This would maximise the buyer's rental yield, assuming that rental yield is important to the buyer. If a prospective buyer wants sea views or to be super close to a beach, there's a variety of resorts with a variety of property types for different budgets. There's no need to be more than a few minutes' drive from the sea anywhere on the Didim Peninsula. But the degree of closeness to a particular beach does affect prices. The budget is an important factor. We would ask whether they want to be in downtown Altrincham amongst the touristic throng during the peak season, or, they can still enjoy the peace and the beauty during the low season. But some people prefer to be just a few minutes walk away and pay less, or pay even less and be a few minutes drive away, yet still have possibly a panoramic sea view, if not a very good sea view. If a prospective buyer wants oodles and oodles of countryside around them, then we're probably talking, look on the Google Earth at Yeşiltepe, where all the land plots are 700 metres squared and there is a maximum build ratio of 15% on the land, so it will always remain rural. Some clients come to Didim for the air quality or sea views, and the best of both are available in a resort called Akbuk. Although this is the resort that has steep hills, which doesn't appeal to all, but it does guarantee stunning views of the bay, and there's also a wonderful backdrop of pine tree covered hills.
Kelly, this is a great transition, because now that we have specific locations in mind, what types of properties do you recommend? And first, let me give you a few brief examples of what I mean. Are we talking about buying pre-construction units for capital appreciation that we flip? Are we talking about buying completed apartments, houses, or office spaces to generate rental income? Or are we talking about buying land to either sell as is or subdivide into smaller tracts? Kelly, give us a better idea of what you are talking about and recommending today.
Assuming that the buyer or the investor is after making the best returns on their money, I think the best returns are to be made in the less developed areas of Didim at present. If a buyer wants a villa, for example, then they need to think land, buy land, and build a bespoke villa, which is so much cheaper than buying a villa that is already started or complete. Because this way the builder's using the investor's money rather than his own money. There are a good selection of land plots available in quieter parts of Didim, and a bespoke build can be finished in 6 to 9 months, depending upon the time of year. A bespoke build also gives a unique property, which always helps if the owner ever wants to sell in the future. We often get asked for a 3 to 5 year investment strategy. And if someone wants a 3 to 5 year investment, we would recommend, at present, buying land to sell. The land should be specifically at the top of Didim, close to where a new university is to be built. The area is currently quiet, mainly green fields actually, but there are 3 high-class touristic complexes already open and built in that area. And yet, although there's mainly green fields, the area is close to the town centre and is equidistant from Didim's superb marina and Altincom's beaches, and also equidistant from the sleepy seaside resort of Marvishire, which also has a high-class 5-star hotel. The land plots that are available have a view over greenbelt land and a full coastal view. The land, which recently got planning permission, will get a lot more built up as the university comes to fruition. So we think that's a real good buy-to-sell land strategy for 3 to 5 year investment. The idea of buying land here is currently cheap, it's not in excessive supply, and it will become more expensive as local developers want to buy. They want to buy themselves in order to build, in order to benefit from the halo effect of the 3-class complexes as well as the new university. Likewise, new builds that will start in that area over the next couple of years should make good growth.
Kelly, listeners and I love detailed breakdowns, just like what you shared with us. But if you don't mind, can I go back just for 1 second? Can you please clarify what bespoke is, as it might be kind of a play on words that might mean something what I'm thinking of, but if you could clarify kind of what that is, that would be great.
Sure. A bespoke build, really design your own dream villa. That's what I mean by that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, now I'm going to hit you up with a 2-part question that I know everyone wants to know, and you have to give us a general range, so we have some price points in mind. Here they are. Part 1. What would be the price range of what we are talking about? Maybe give us a starting price point at the low end to a final price point at the high end. And Kelly, just to clarify, I am talking about total purchase price.
Okay, total purchase prices I think would start at around 70,000 Turkish lira. That's approximately $34,000 or 25,000 euros. That would be for a 1-bedroom apartment on a complex. And our maximum total purchase price would be up to about 500,000 Turkish lira. That's approximately $245,000 or 180,000 euros. And that would be for one of the pre-mentioned bespoke designed detached villas, maybe 5 bedrooms, 3, maybe 4 floors. Design your own detached villa in its own walled garden.
And part 2, as a follow-up, what would be the cost per meter? Again, maybe something at a starting price point at the low end to a final price point at the high end.
Cost per meter square is not a common measure here in Didim, so I'm working from professional memory really, but I think it's fair to say that an apartment averages around 800 to 2,000 Turkish lira per meter squared. The self-designed bespoke villas are quite easy to calculate. They're about 1,000 Turkish lira per meter squared plus the all-important cost of the land. And the cost of the land does vary depending on the location. Key-ready villas, i.e. villas that have been built by a developer and they're either near completion or completed, they tend to work out at around 1,500 to 2,000 lira per meter squared.
And for listeners like me who are used to dealing in square feet, divide the number you hear by 10.76, or maybe just a flat 10 to keep it easy, and you get close enough numbers to get an idea of what Kelly's referring to. Okay, Kelly, this is a question I like to call, what would Grandma do? My grandma calls you up, says she has X amount of dollars to spend. You know, you can't let my grandma down. Share with us 3 specific examples you would show her and explain why these make sense.
Oh, Taylor, Grandma White would be welcome to pop in to discuss her needs any day of the week.
Perfect.
But assuming that I knew better than her, which I never assume that, but just for the argument's sake, assuming that I know better than her and what was best for her, I think I would recommend her to consider one of 3. Possibly an apartment at the Güneşi complex in Akbük. Güneşi means daylight. I think older people always like good sunshine and daylight. The development has 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments starting at 100,000 Turkish lira. The concept is super modern. We have 6 low-level apartment builds around a large pool area. The development, even though the sharp listeners will recall that Akbük is a hilly complex, the development is actually situated on flat land in Akbük Resort Centre. It's next to the weekly fresh produce market, very close to the bus station and the shopping centre, all the local shops very close by, and to top it all, it's just 300 metres from the harbour, and there are sea views on the middle and top floor apartments. Alternatively, she may like to design her own villa, a bespoke villa, or a key-ready villa in Yeşilkent. Yeşilkent means green area, and literal translation there, the resort is flat, it's pretty, and it has sandy beaches all around. The properties are almost all villas. The resort is quiet most of the year, but it's busier in July and August when mainly Turkish villa owners come for their summer relax in their second homes, their holiday homes. It's quite popular as a retirement area, and I see your grandma as being a bit of a classy lady, Taylor. So Of course. Absolutely. So I think she'd like the ambience on offer at Yeşilkent. It's really, really very, very pleasant. Okay, let's just think Grandma's not thinking for herself. She's thinking what she can do for her pounds and her pennies. If Grandma wanted to buy a buy-to-let, she would do very well by buying a resale apartment in the town centre. These offer lower prices than the new builds, yet they command similar rents, thus offering her a higher rental yield, maybe between 8 and 9, possibly 10% on a good-priced resale apartment, compared to around 5% on a brand new apartment that's for a buy-to-let.
Kelly, we are laser focused on specific areas of Didim. We know our starting price point. We have an idea of cost per meter. We have 3 specific examples which are good enough even for Grandma. Now let me ask you an obvious question. How do we buy? Do we need to come in with all cash, whether that's from our checking account, home equity line of credit, or retirement funds? Or can we come in with a certain percentage down and get local financing from a bank or credit union?
A simple answer would be any of the above, Taylor. As I mentioned before, the cash limit per person is 10,000 euros or currency equivalent per visit. But I would always recommend a bank transfer as the best way to buy a property. It leaves a clear audit trail as well as being safer than carrying cash on one's person. Anyway, it isn't necessary to carry a lot of cash to buy property in Turkey. To seal a deal, a small deposit is required. But so long as a 10% deposit is sent to the vendor within a week of the buyer's return to their home country, that's fine. Turkish banks will lend to many nationalities, but most foreign buyers tend to arrange finance in their home country and send their payments via a bank transfer.
Okay, Kelly, anyone who has ever owned real estate can tell you, you need to have a money exit strategy in place even before you buy. It's something what I like to call, where's the cheddar? You are buying the property to do what with it to make some money. So, Kelly, where's my cheddar?
Your cheddar, Taylor, will be derived from rental incomes and or profit upon selling. Buy-to-lets to the long-term market will generate 5 to 9, as I said, maybe 10% yield every year. Annual rents are contracted to rise 10% per annum, and buy-to-lets to the long-term market, at the risk of repeating myself one time too often, should be in the town centre where prices have risen every year for the last 11 years and where there is very little land remaining. Properties for short-term letting will generate a positive yield every year, but it's difficult to be exact as every year tourism figures and rates are affected by so many factors bigger than the property itself and factors outside of the property owner's control. For example, bird flu or an airline going bust or the Olympic Games and people staying at home to watch, I don't know, maybe the European Cup for soccer fans. This has a big effect on income figures for short-term lets. The secret to a successful short-term let cheddar strategy is to buy a hot short-term let, one that will be sold quickly and it should appreciate in value and will still generate a positive rental yield each year. But the tastiest cheddar of all is the profits made upon selling an investment. And of course, as you say, none of us have a crystal ball, but I would like to add that any company that promises growth rates shouldn't be listened to. But with a bit of background knowledge about an area, an intelligent person is capable of appreciating a mature cheddar from a washy, weak flavoured cheese.
I love that. Okay, Kelly, you have been amazing, and I wanted to thank you for taking the time to share with us about Didim Real Estate. We have heard about your journey, why you chose Turkey, exact areas of Didim to focus on, price points to look out for, specific examples good enough even for grandma, a money strategy to purchase, and then what we might do with it after the fact to make some cheddar. Unfortunately, it's time to say goodbye. But before we do, share with us easy ways to get a hold of you, any parting advice you might want to share, and then let's say goodbye.
Thanks, Taylor. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I'd like to thank your listeners for connecting with us, and I hope they like the little that they've heard about property in Didim. My name is Kelly, and my husband is Max. We own and manage Didim Sun Properties, an independent, award-winning real estate agency based here in Didim on Turkey's Aegean coast. Now, Didim is spelt D-I-D-I-M, and our company, Didim Sun Properties, won the Association of International Property Professionals Award for Best International Real Estate Agency in 2010, and we were shortlisted again in 2011. We're proud of our achievements. It doesn't stop us in any way. We don't brag, we just carry on. We're open for business 365 days of the year, and any of the listeners can contact us via our website, which is www.didimsun.com, and also we're on Skype. All of our phone numbers are displayed on our website, www.didimsun.com. Anyone wanting to discuss anything they've heard today or any general property issues they have for the area, please feel free to drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you, and please mention IREL or Taylor White to qualify for an extra lump of cheddar advice when we meet with you. Thanks for listening to us today.
Awesome, Kelly. I have really enjoyed this conversation, straight from Didim, Turkey to our earbuds, and I hope we can catch up again in 3 to 6 months.
I'd be delighted, Taylor. Thank you.
I want to thank Kelly once again for her fantastic take being on the ground in Didim. Kelly is the prime example of what this show is all about, local and on the ground. And I can't wait to get her back on the show again soon with more specific Didim real estate investments she believes you need to hear about right now. If you are listening to this podcast and want to grab Kelly's contact details, links on buying or selling Didim real estate, or any other show notes, head on over to irelpodcast.com/7. Are you a real estate agent like Kelly with an amazing story you want to share? Do you have properties located in the world's most desired hotspots just waiting for buyers? Well, guess what? I want to help. Whether you are a Canadian in Mexico, an Aussie in Malaysia, or an American in Costa Rica, or even a Brit like Kelly in Turkey, I invite you to share it with my eager listeners. Head on over to irelpodcast.com/7 to get started. And together we will share your story.
You have been listening to the IREL Podcast with Taylor White. Be sure to hit up irelpodcast.com for more. That's irelpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.